Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. I was going to do this video late last night, early this morning, ever how you want to describe it. But my youngest twin decided he wanted to stay awake till 1 o'clock in the morning. So I figured by that time it's probably too late to do one. So I wanted to come on here now and do one. So if you come on here live, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section down below. Make sure you give the video a like. Give the video a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do so and share the video on all social media platforms. But I want to discuss some college football scores from yesterday and then talk about a couple of things in the world of college football. We've already discussed all the games from Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. So today we only have to discuss the games from yesterday, and I'm even going to throw in some scores from teams that I normally don't talk about, but it's the last game of the season, so I try to make sure I give every team in America at least one scoreboard shout out throughout the college football season. And as always, like I do every year, sometime in the next couple of weeks, I want to come on here and talk about the coaching carousel, because we know there's always several coaches that get fired, some resign, and then there's coaches that leave smaller programs to go to bigger programs, and then a coach leaves an even smaller program to go to that small program. So there's always a huge coaching carousel every time the college football season ends. But I want to start with this, and I've been wanting to mention this in a college football video for the longest time, and I always forget. So today I'm going to mention it before I forget, and that is Joe Tessitore sucks. Now, if you're watching this video, I would love for you to leave a comment in the comment section down below. And if you're a wrestling fan, you know, hey there, Al, glad to have you here. If you're a wrestling fan, you know that Joe Tessitore does play-by-play for Monday Night Raw. And me saying Joe Tessitore sucks has nothing to do with what he does on Raw. If you think he's good with wrestling, that's fine. I'm keeping him separate. I'm not going to hate him just because he sucks on football commentary, but I'm not going to say he's good just because I think he's good at football commentary. To me, they're separate. Joe Tessitore, he is a play-by-play guy for ESPN. The reason why I say he sucks, hey there, Emily, glad to have you here, is because, hey there, Paisley, glad to have you here. And Pookie, glad to have you here. Thank all of y'all for tuning in. Please feel free to give the video a like and a thumbs up. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so. Hey there, Drake. Glad to have you here. And I'm glad y'all put your names out in the comments section, because if you don't, I'm just going to say the name that pops up on the comment. And my problem with Joe Tessitore is, hey there, Mohan. Glad to have you here. Like, I don't like Paul Feinbaum. The next time Paul Feinbaum says anything relevant will be the first time ever that Paul Feinbaum has said something relevant. But I understand Paul Feinbaum and Tim Tebow and Laura Rutledge and whoever else works for the SEC network, because that's their bread and butter. That's who signs their paychecks. Hey there, Bucco. Glad to have you here. Hey there, Andreveer. Glad to have you here. But my problem with Joe Tessitore is, unlike Tim Tebow and Paul Feinbaum, Joe Tessitore is not an SEC network color commentator or play-by-play guy. He is a ESPN play-by-play guy. He's supposed to be unbiased and call the game. And Joe Tessitore, not just Friday night, if you watch Georgia and Georgia Tech, I bet he mentioned 147 times during that game that if Georgia wins, they're in the playoffs. Didn't mention anything about the game half the time, was too busy talking about Georgia making the playoffs. You're a Georgia fan. Well, no matter who you pull for, I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you agree that Joe Tessitore sucks. But not only that, if Joe Tessitore was calling the game between Ohio State and Illinois, I guarantee you every time there was a break in the action and every time there was a timeout, instead of going to break, he would spend 2 minutes talking about some player or some team in the SEC. He needs to either just be off TV or go work for the SEC network because there is no sense in you supposed to be a ESPN unbiased play-by-play guy and you spend your whole game talking about somebody in the SEC. It's ridiculous. If you watch the Clemson and Gamecock game yesterday, the guy that did play-by-play in that game yesterday went to school at Clemson. He graduated at Clemson. He is from the upstate of South Carolina. But if you didn't get on Google and look up his career bio, you wouldn't know that because the tone of his voice did not change whether Clemson did good or the Gamecocks did good. He cheered for both teams at the same level of interest, which is what you're supposed to do. Joe Tessitore is awful. And I'm glad you have puppies and that they can sit down. That is good to hear. But let's get off of Joe Tessitore and go ahead and talk some scores. Hopefully, as we go along, there'll be some more folks that jump on here. Thanks for all the thumbs up I've gotten so far. But South Carolina defeated Clemson 17-14. Was actually one of the better, if not the best games from yesterday. Clemson played a lot better than I expected. And if you watched my video yesterday morning, Mike was on here. Mike asked me what did I think the score would be and who would win the game. And I said, well, the way Clemson's offense is struggling, I don't see them scoring more than 14 points unless they get a turnover on defense and gives them easy touchdown. And sure enough, they scored 14 points. Hey there, Austin. Glad to have you here, and all is well. Thank you for your concern and asking. Everything is well. Every day is a good day. There's no such thing as a bad day. But it was almost like the Pittsburgh game. If you watched Clemson when they played Pittsburgh, the Clemson offense in the second half against Pittsburgh just disappeared. And Austin, I'm glad you're asking. Hopefully you will subscribe. On this channel, I talk sports, but not just one sport. I talk college football, the NFL, NASCAR, college basketball, the NBA, Major League Baseball. I even talk some boxing every now and then. I talk wrestling. Hey there, Soha, glad to have you here. Hey there, RK, glad you're on board. Kevron, glad to have you here, man. I'm just fixing to talk about the Clemson and South Carolina game, but Austin asked about the channel. It's a sports channel, and then sometimes I do top 10 countdowns that are about food, about vacation spots, about a holiday. You just never know. But this channel, I don't talk anything serious. Like, I won't talk politics because that causes division, and I want everybody to get along. You're going to subscribe, see what sort of things you upload. You seem chill, interactive, and polite. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And anybody that's ever met me in person can tell you that I'm the same way in person that I am on here. I'm not one of those people that uses a YouTube persona, kind of like wrestlers use a wrestling gimmick. I don't use no YouTube gimmick. What you see on here is the same thing you'll see in person. I'm just as chill in person as I am on here. Wear the same clothes, talk the same, act the same. There's no difference. This is me. I don't have a YouTube persona and a real life persona. This is me. And my name is Brandon. That's why the channel is called Ref Brandon and the Todd Family, because I am a professional, independent wrestling referee, hence the name Ref Brandon. But South Carolina wins the game 17-14. And the reason why I say it's like the Pittsburgh game, because against Pittsburgh, Clemson got a lead and just did nothing and just kind of laid back. And then late in the game, Pittsburgh come back and took the lead, and then Clemson was able to come back down the field and score and win the game. Austin, I try my best to do a video every single day, but if I don't do one every day, I at least do 5 or 6 a week. I think it's useless to start a YouTube channel and only, do a YouTube video once every month. you're never going to grow that way. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy to grow the channel. So I post just about every day, but like Thanksgiving, maybe I didn't do one. On Christmas Day, I may not do one. If it's my kids' birthdays, I may not do one. But 99% of the time, I do one every single day. So there's usually 7 videos per week. You are from India and your name is Rishav. Glad to have you here, Rishav, or RK, whichever one you prefer to be called. I am from the deep, deep South in the state of Georgia. That's where I am from. But I think it was like the Pittsburgh game because Clemson was up 14-10 and they caused 3 turnovers. But every time they cause a turnover, they just get the ball back. And most teams cause a turnover and they go for your throat and get the ball. And first play, they'll go deep. Clemson didn't. They'd cause a turnover and come out and just do a running play. Just nothing spectacular. So they had plenty of chances to put the game away and didn't do it. And then in the fourth quarter, South Carolina finally goes up 17-14. And I thought, this is going to be like Pittsburgh. There's a minute 8 to go. They're going to come back, drive down the field, and score and win this game. And I thought that was going to happen. And they got all the way down to the 20-yard line. And I still don't know what Cade Klubnik was thinking, but they had about 20 seconds left and 1 timeout. So you had time really to run about 2 plays and then use your timeout. But Cade Klubnik decides to run towards the right-hand side of the field, toward the right hash mark, like he's going to go out of bounds, and then throws the ball to Phil Maffa, who's about 3 yards up the field. And Phil Maffa had a defender right behind him. So even if Maffa catches the ball, you just wasted 7 or 8 seconds to gain 3 yards. And then you got to call your timeout there because Phil Maffa is on the right hash mark. He's not getting out of bounds. So I have no idea what Cade Klubnik was thinking. I thought they were going to go to the end zone on the first play. If that didn't work, they'd come back on the second play and kind of have Klubnik just fall in the middle of the field so your field goal is straight and you kick it and go to overtime. But what he was thinking, I don't know. Hey there, Celestial. Glad to have you here. But it looked like he was running towards the out-of-bounds line and decided, oh, there's Maffa, which Maffa was there, but he was 3 yards up, and he's not getting out of bounds. So Cade would have been better off if he'd have kept going and ran out of bounds. And then a lot of the fans got mad because after the game, Dabo was asked about the play call, and Dabo just came out and said that wasn't the play call. That was Cade's decision. Cade did that on his own. And they were mad that Dabo said that. And I'm thinking, this is why coaches nowadays don't like to do press conferences. And this is why coaches nowadays on their weekly coaches show on the radio, whatever station they are, whatever market they're in, why most of them don't take phone calls now. Because with fans, you can never do no right. Hey there, Paisley. I think I already said your name one time. Maybe I'm wrong, though. But Dabo didn't just come out and say, I don't know what Cade was thinking. He was asked the question, and he answered the question. If he lies, people get mad that he lies. And if he doesn't answer the question at all, they think, well, if he's not answering, we know that Garrett Riley called that play. Otherwise, Dabo would say. So Dabo is asked the question and answers the question like you're supposed to do and answer it honestly. And then folks get mad that he said that. Well, what's he supposed to do? But it's funny how coaches can say things. And, the way Dabo acts now is the same way Dabo acted 10 years ago. But when you're winning national championships, people don't care. All of a sudden, you stop winning them, and the same way you're acting, it ain't good enough. I don't want to say bye, Paisley. I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay for the rest of the conversation so you can keep comment. Even if you're not a football fan, you can still comment, keep us on in the background doing whatever you're doing. But Clemson still has an outside shot now at an ACC championship and a playoff berth if they can beat SMU this upcoming Saturday. And Louisville defeats Kentucky 41-14. And I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that even though Kentucky beats Louisville just about every year, no matter how bad Kentucky is, I didn't think they would this year because Kentucky's flat out awful, and they are. But it reminded me of something that the better team doesn't always win. And yesterday, Louisville was a better team, and they won, but there's several years that Louisville is way better than Kentucky, but for whatever reason, they just can't beat them. We saw the same thing yesterday with Ohio State and Michigan. Ohio State is far and away better than Michigan, but yet they lost the game. Hey there, Clifton. Glad to have you here. They don't want to talk about the non out of bounds call. And hey there, Nalita. Glad to have you here. But people not talk about who's going to the playoffs and who is not going to the playoffs. They always talk about, well, so and so should be in because they're the better team. You really can't say that. If two teams don't play each other, especially this year in college football, you can't say who the better team is because nobody thinks that Michigan is better than Ohio State, but yet they won the game. So you can't just say, well, we should rank Alabama because they're better than Penn State. How do we know that? There's no way to know that. You can't just assume that somebody's better than somebody. So to me, that's why I say that wins and losses should matter and head-to-head shouldn't matter. Because if wins and losses don't matter and head-to-head don't matter, why even play the game in the first place? Because clearly Ohio State is better than Michigan, but yet Michigan won the game. So the better team doesn't always win, but you can't just assume that somebody's better than somebody because nobody that knows anything about college football would tell you that Oklahoma's better than Alabama. But guess what? When they played, Oklahoma was better than Alabama. Illinois defeats Northwestern 38-28. Tennessee, the score looked a lot closer than the game actually was, but Tennessee wins the game over Vanderbilt 36-23 because Vanderbilt ran the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, and then Tennessee fumbled, and Vanderbilt went maybe 20 yards and scored. So Vanderbilt had 14 points in the first 5 minutes and only had 20 yards of offense. But something has to be done to the way Josh Heupel coaches football. Now, I didn't see this game live. I went back and watched it later because it was on when the Clemson game was on. But if you watched the Clemson game yesterday, that game was 3 hours and I believe 19 minutes. I believe that's how long it was because there wasn't a lot of penalties. There wasn't a lot of incomplete passes. It was just two teams that played hatred football but didn't try to hurt each other, kept it clean, and played a good football game. I don't know what Josh Heupel does, but I was watching the Clemson game, and every time it would show that score, I would look, and both games started about the same time. Matter of fact, Tennessee game may have started 5 minutes earlier because Clemson kicked off at 12:08 Eastern time. And yes, Paisley, if you have to go, you can go. I'm never going to tell somebody they can't go. I just prefer everybody sit on here and comment. But if you have to go, you can go. And the Clemson game was like 10 minutes to go in the first half, and the Tennessee game was still in the first quarter. And that's why they're changing all these rules now to make these football games shorter. Because Josh Heupel can play a game and Tennessee can win 10-7, and the game lasts 5.5 hours. And there's no reason why a college football game in regulation should last that long. It just shouldn't. And I understand if you go to 12 overtimes, but Friday night, Georgia and Georgia Tech played 8 overtimes, and their total game time wasn't much longer than yesterday's Tennessee Vanderbilt game, who just played 4 quarters of regulation. Josh Heupel, I don't know what he does, but he's supposed to be a fast-paced offensive genius, but yet his games, they can start on Saturday and end on Tuesday. In this day and time, with everybody's attention span being so short and everybody being on social media, you just can't play a game, make that game last 7 hours. It's ridiculous, it's dumb, and it's stupid, and there's no sense in it. But if you watch the Clemson game yesterday, before I continue, I wanted to say, I always say that I want to do a video about some things I think should change in the world of college football, some rules that are dumb, and you've seen one yesterday. Now, it wasn't a play design, a play call. Cade Klubnik fell down. I don't know if he was stepped on by one of the linemen or if he just slipped and fell. But as he was falling down, it looked like they had some sort of trick play set up. but Cade lost his balance for whatever reason and flipped the ball back to Maffa. So it was an underhanded backwards pass. And the fact that Maffa didn't catch it didn't matter because it was underhanded. But the ball was on the ground and Maffa fell down. And then they reviewed it and said that since it was an underhanded backwards pass, it was a fumble and the Gamecocks recovered. Now, I'm not mad at the referees because the call was right by what the actual rule is. And according to the rule book, that's a fumble. But they've got to change that play because in any other position in football, anything else you're doing, if your whole entire body is on the ground, then the play is dead. So on that play, if Phil Maffa's whole entire body is on the ground, the play should be dead. I don't care if he didn't have firm control of the football. It doesn't matter. He's got the football under his arm. His whole body is on the ground. In any other position in football, anything you're doing, if your whole body's on the ground, the play is dead. So that play should not be any different. So I'm not mad at the referees because according to the definition of the rule book, they got the call right. It was a fumble. But it's dumb that any other way in football, you fall down, the play is dead. But on an underhanded backward pass, the running back falls down and the play ain't dead. That's dumb. That's just another one of the things in football that has to be changed. Like I've always said, that to me, for a kicker, there should be two categories. There should be a missed kick and there should be a blocked kick. Because the Clemson kicker this year has not missed a field goal as far as one that he's kicked up in the air and has got all the way through and the ball went up. He's made every one of them. There ain't been none short, none wide left, none wide right, none hit the upright. If he's got it up in the air, it's went through. But if you look at his stats, he's got 6 missed field goals. He didn't miss them. They were blocked. There should be a blocked field goal stat and a missed field goal stat. I don't think you should, if you're a kicker, that you should say, hey, man, you missed 6 kicks this year. No, you didn't. They were blocked. So now, if had they went in the air, maybe you missed them, but we'll never know. But you didn't miss them. They were blocked. Of course you missed it. It didn't get up in the air. And Sports and Beats, Clemson is good, but they're no longer the elite program they used to be. And that's the thing that most Clemson fans have to realize. And that's the only bad part about winning. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Sports and Beats. It brings up another conversation I had with somebody a couple of weeks ago. Hey there, Gator fan, glad you're here. We were talking about, winning. And I said, every sports team that sucks, all they say is, man, I want to win one game. And then you win one game and it turns into, man, I want to win 2 games. And you win 2 games, it turns into, I want to go to a bowl game. You always want more. And ever since Clemson won their national championships, ever since those 2 years, nothing they do is good enough. Every time they lose a game now, Dabo got to go fire the whole staff. And Dabo's not getting fired, and I'm not saying fire the whole staff, but after you win 2 national titles in 3 years and you play for 4 in 5 years, the fan base gets spoiled, and they think that's going to last forever. And I've been on here many a times, and I've told not just Clemson fans, but I've told Georgia fans when they won their 2 national titles, it doesn't last forever. Hey there, Dirty Money. If a receiver drops a pass, it goes against the quarterback as an incomplete pass. Yes, it does, and that's dumb too. But I don't know how you change that. You would spend all day long if you had, like a few years back. Hey there, Paisley. Glad you're back. A few years back, somebody said that quarterbacks should have their stats changed because nowadays a quarterback will get credit for having 475 passing yards, and 99% of the passes quarterbacks throw now go 5 yards. And the receiver will catch it and break for 50 yards, and that quarterback gets credit for a 55-yard pass when no, the quarterback threw the ball 5 yards. But then you'd have to have a quarterback pass for 5 yards, a receiver catch, and a receiver run a 50 yards. So if you're the stat person, it would take you 3 days to gather stats. So that's one of those stats I don't know that you can change, but I do agree with you that it's not right for an incomplete pass when the receiver drops it. But I just don't know how you change that because that would make the stat person be there for 3 days gathering up all the stats. Did you see that Trevor Lawrence got hit in the head and a giant fight broke out? No, I did not. I have been at church all day and I came home, and as soon as I walked in the door, I took my shoes off and came inside and sat down for a video. So I ain't even turned my TV on yet. But the Jaguars suck. So more than likely, in my neck of the woods, they probably wouldn't even be on TV right now. They shouldn't be on TV right now because they are flat out absolutely awful. I don't know that they're the worst team in the league. I think they're better than the Giants a little bit, better than the Raiders a little bit. But if they're not the worst, they're bottom three. They're terrible. They ain't got no business being on TV. They are awful. Illinois beats Northwestern 38-28. Michigan, as I said, beat Ohio State 13-10. Duke goes 9-3, and Manny Diaz's first year, so he did a great job. If you missed the ending of that game, you're watching your Vikings. Well, let me know what the score is, Sports Beats. Anyway, back to your conversation before I talk about Duke. And now you got all the Clemson fans that are spoiled because they won 2 national championships. And I tried to tell them, winning doesn't last forever. You can look at not just football, but look at baseball. The Yankees at one time won 4 World Series in 5 years. And since that time, they've won 1 in the last 24 years. And look at the Patriots, how many they won NFL, and where are they at now? One of the worst teams in the league. So no matter what sport it is, no matter who your team is, if they win a national championship, NBA finals, whatever sport it is, you better enjoy it because it's not like you're going to be getting 4 in the next 5 years. The chances of that happening are not very good. 9-6 Cardinals up. Oh, okay, you're playing the Cardinals. They've actually got a chance to win their division this year. But Duke, if you missed that game, Wake Forest was up 17-3 in mid-third quarter and just never scored again. So it's 17-17 with 8 seconds left, and Duke has the ball, and it looks like they're just going to go back for a Hail Mary. But one receiver runs down the right side of the field, and nobody covered him. So Malik Murphy goes back and just throws about a 30-yard pass, and the receiver catches it on the 15-yard line wide open and runs in and wins the game. So Duke finishes 9-3, and Wake Forest finishes 4-8 for the second straight season. A collective history of natty wins is a statement. Yes, it is, and when you get them, you enjoy them. Like I enjoyed the 2 that Clemson got, but I'm not one of those over-the-top fans. Like I don't go out and buy all kind of merchandise with national championship logos on it. I don't do any of that. But I'm a Clemson fan. Everybody knows that. If you cut me, I bleed orange. But I'll buy Clemson shirts. But I'm not going to buy hundreds and thousands of dollars of merchandise just because you won a national title. I'm just not going to do it. That shirt ain't going to last forever. You're going to wear it, and you're going to wash it, and the writing's going to fade, and then I feel like I just wasted $1,000 because everything I spent is now going in the trash can. That's just my way of thinking. But people do that, and that's fine for them. But I remember when it happened, you know what? We might win 2 or 3 more, but it ain't going to last forever. The Chiefs right now are dominating in the NFL, but when this run ends, and it will end, they may not win another one for 100 years. And that's just the way it goes. So if your team is winning, enjoy it, but don't get used to it and think it's going to happen every year because it's not. Louisiana finishes 10-2 by defeating their arch rival, Louisiana Monroe, 37-23. I'm enjoying this video. We're 30 minutes in, and I've only talked about maybe 10 games. So I enjoy getting all the comments in the comment section. Baylor beat Kansas 45-17. I think Baylor finished 8-4 this year. So Baylor had a pretty good season. Last year, their coach was on the hot seat, supposedly. But after this year, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. And you watched that last play. I'm assuming you're talking about Duke and Wake Forest. And that was an easy pass from Malik Murphy because everybody else went to the end zone. And Texas Tech all over West Virginia, 52-15. There was rumors coming out in about week 7 that the Mountaineers were going to fire their coach. And yesterday they played like they want a new coach. They just had no effort, no energy, no nothing. That game was over in the first quarter. UConn finishes 8-4. They defeat UMass 47-42, and they say that Jim Mora Jr. just rubs everybody the wrong way. And if he ever finishes coaching at UConn, then nobody else is going to want him. But, UConn's never on TV. So unless you're a diehard UConn fan that goes and reads all the stuff, you're really not aware and sure of exactly what Jim Moore Jr. has done and said. But it must be true because he's winning at UConn. And not only are they still not on TV, but when there's coaching openings, nobody talks about Jim Moore Jr. But he's been very successful at UConn. North Texas defeats Temple 24-17. Now, I talked about Central Florida in yesterday's video because they played Friday night. But yesterday, Arthur Gustav Malzahn, better known as Gus Malzahn, who was the head coach at Central Florida, he stepped down with an overall record of 28-24 in 4 years at Central Florida, which is an average of 7 wins and 6 losses per year, to become the offensive coordinator at Florida State. So he may not have to move houses. He may just drive from Orlando to Tallahassee. But I know it's a step down as far as going from head coach to just a coordinator. But I can guarantee you he's going to make more money as the Florida State coordinator on offense than he was making at Central Florida as the head coach. And at his age, maybe he's just, you know what? I've coached. I'm done with coaching. I want a lot less stress. I'll just be a play caller. Side Dish defeats South Florida 35-28. Troy 52. Southern Miss 20. Coastal Carolina 48. Georgia State 27. Army wins again. They defeat UTSA 29-24. Florida Atlantic defeats Tulsa 63-16. And the only reason why I wrote that score down because I wanted to talk about Florida Atlantic. I knew if I didn't write that score down, I'd forget. But Florida Atlantic, until they recently fired him, was coached by Tom Herman. Now, if you're a college football fan, you know that name. Tom Herman, 10 years ago, was the next big thing in the world of college football. He was the coach that everybody wanted. And anytime there was a coaching opening, it was Tom Herman. Well, he finally got the job at Texas, and I don't think that was the right fit, but I also think Texas gave up way too soon, so they fired him. Then he went to be a coordinator, and then he got the head coaching job at Florida Atlantic, and that was terrible. So after failing at Texas and failing at Florida Atlantic with the Owls, Tom Herman has gone from the next big thing in college football to a coach that nobody wants. So it'll be interesting now to see if he gets another head coaching job, and if so, where. And if not, is he going to be satisfied now making a career out of being a, coordinator on one side or the other? But it's funny how things can change so fast, and everybody wanted Tom Herman, and he coached at Texas, and that didn't work out, and now nobody wants Tom Herman. But NC State becomes bowl eligible. They defeat North Carolina 35-30. So North Carolina finishes 6-6, and NC State finishes 6-6. And I talked about Mac Brown earlier in the week, getting fired. And I saw this morning that Mac Brown pretty much trashed North Carolina on his firing. And now I have not watched anything about it, so I don't know what he said. And it might be another one of those things where somebody is trying to make a big stink out of nothing, and it's not a big deal. But let's say it's true and Mac Brown did trash North Carolina. What are they supposed to do? He's one of those coworkers. You ever have one of those coworkers that walks in, and the day they walk in, they think just because they're breathing, you got to respect them? Well, that's kind of how Mac Brown is reacting. He's thinking that since he's 112 years old and coached forever, he gets to do what he wants. And the money these coaches make this day and time, that's not going to happen. North Carolina don't care what you did 25 years ago. They don't care what you did 10 years ago. All they know is you've had back-to-back first-round NFL draft pick quarterbacks, and you accomplished absolutely nothing. So as far as they're concerned, your coaching career's over with. What are they supposed to do? Let you stay on board just because you're Mac Brown? I mean, that makes zero sense to me. UCLA defeats Fresno State 20-13. Rutgers wins again. They defeat Michigan State 41-14. Old Dominion defeats Arkansas State 40-32. Boston College, after changing quarterbacks, wins their last couple of games and looks pretty good on offense. They defeat Pittsburgh 34-23. So Pittsburgh goes from 7-0 to 7-5. Syracuse defeats Miami, which is the reason why Clemson is playing for the ACC championship, 42-38. And Miami went up 21-0. And I thought, man, they're going to run away with this game. And then after that, Syracuse outplayed them. And Syracuse's new coach, Fran Brown, he is a very high-energy coach. He's just like Georgia Tech's coach, Brent Key. If I had a kid right now that was going to play college football, I would tell them, go to Syracuse. Man, that guy will be fun to play for. SMU wins again. They defeat California 38-6. And I said back in preseason that SMU was going to be surprisingly good, and they are. But I didn't think they were going to be this good. So they were better than even I expected. Penn State all over Maryland, 44-7. Arizona State wins their rivalry game over Arizona, 49-7. Alabama wins the Iron Bowl, 28-14. Notre Dame beats USC, 49-35. Missouri defeats Arkansas, 28-21. In the Bayou Classic with the two most historic HBCU programs, Southern defeats Grambling 24-14. Indiana shuts out Purdue 66-0. Florida all over Florida State, which should be expected because Florida State was absolutely atrocious, 31-11. LSU defeats Oklahoma 37-17. Wyoming 15. Washington State 14. Georgia Southern 29. Appalachian State 20. TCU 20. Cincinnati 13. UTEP 42. New Mexico State 35. Western Kentucky 19. Jacksonville State 17. Texas 17. Texas A&M 7. Virginia Tech 37. Virginia 17. Iowa State 29. Kansas State 21. So now Iowa State will play Arizona State for the Big 12 championship. And then the final Big 12 game from last night, BYU defeats Houston 30-18. And then one last thing I want to say before I jump off here, before I get to that, thanks to all the commenters. Hopefully all of you gave the video a like and a thumbs up, and you subscribed if you have not yet subscribed. But I mentioned back before the season that, you know, Ryan Day's bugaboo right now is that Ryan Day just cannot beat Michigan. But the last couple of years under Jim Harbaugh, Michigan was so good that if you lost to them, you might could say, hey, man, they've got just as much talent as we do, so it's not really an upset. I mean, Michigan won the national title last year. But this year, Ohio State clearly is a better team, and it's not even close. And I said when I was talking about that video that, you know, if Ryan Day was not on the hot seat right now, if he loses to Michigan, he would be. And sure enough, the last 24 hours, I've probably heard from 19,478 people, whether it's radio, YouTube, magazines, TV, whatever, that say Ryan Day needs to be fired. I knew it was coming because that's their rival and they can't beat them. Now, if Ohio State makes the playoffs and wins the national championship, all will be forgiven. But if they don't, it's going to get even worse. But if you win the national championship, you'll pass up beating your rival because you got last laugh. You won the national title. But if Ohio State don't win the national title, it's going to get even worse. But the problem is, should Ryan Day be fired? I guess that's your own personal opinion. But he has the best winning percentage in the history of college football for any coach that's coached 75 games. Now, nobody looks at that because he has not won a national title yet, but that's factual evidence. That's not an opinion, that's fact. You can look it up. Ryan Day has the highest ever winning percentage of any coach in the history of college football that's coached at least 75 games. But in the last 5 years, he's 1-4 against Michigan, but he's like 47-1 against everybody else. He just cannot beat Michigan. But after a while, the fans get tired of the fact you can't beat your rival, especially if you're not winning national championships. But the problem is, if you fire a guy that has the highest ever winning percentage of any coach in the history of college football that's coached 75 games, then you're telling the whole world that Ohio State has higher standards than Georgia, higher standards than Alabama, higher standards than Oregon, or any other blue blood program, because you just fired a guy that's doing nothing but winning. So if you do that, it's going to be really hard to find somebody with a better winning shot because they don't exist. But if you fire him and bring on another coach, and this coach comes in, first year goes 9-3, and second year goes 10-2, well, you got to fire him too because he's losing more than Ryan Day did. So if you want to fire Ryan Day because he can't beat Michigan, I understand because that rivalry means so much to those two programs. But when you fire a guy that has the best winning percentage in the history of college football for any coach that's coached 75 games, then you're telling the whole world at Ohio State, if we can't win every game, it ain't good enough. And the problem is there's never been a school and never will be a school that's going to win every game. You're going to lose. So we'll have to find out whether or not he gets fired. I believe it'll calm down now in the next 24 to 48 hours. But I believe that if Ohio State makes the playoffs and they don't win it all, it's going to pick back up all over again. If you follow the channel, I said back in August that the two best teams in America, talent-wise, were Ohio State and Georgia. And it did not mean that one of those two teams were going to win the national championship. I was just saying based on talent and talent alone, the two best teams in America are Ohio State and Georgia. And I said that because I think top to bottom, 1 through 105, Georgia has the best roster in America. But I think just in the starting 22 on offense and defense, it's Ohio State. So Ohio State has the best starting lineup in football, but top to bottom, 1 through 105, the best roster in football is Georgia. So if you're going to give a team a national championship based on just talent, then it's going to be either Ohio State or Georgia. But if you follow not just football but all sports, you know that sometimes, a lot of times, most of the time, the team that has the most talent does not always win. But let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. Why should you never throw Grandpa's false teeth at a vehicle? You might dent your car. And that does it for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.